Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. So I'm Lori Durham, the superintendent of Falmouth Public Schools, and Chief Dunn is obviously the chief of the police department, and we are here jointly to do a update presentation on the safety and security of the Falmouth Public Schools. There was a session in the spring that kind of went over a lot of the protocols that Falmouth has taken to that point. And then there were some next steps. And so tonight is really talking about those next steps going forward. And so we just want to continue this conversation with the community. So I think we expect that we're going to continue these, every 6-8 months, just to make sure that we're keeping, because things are ever changing. And so we want to make sure that we're having that dialogue. And so we're going to have a couple presentations, but we're definitely, this is about question and answer and the dialogue with the community. So I think Chief Dunn's going to talk to us a little bit about what we've done since the presentation that took place in the spring.
Thank you. Thank you, and again, thank you for coming. Last spring we did have that conversation where we were doing, what we were doing with the different schools. And we told you that, and you said it fast, it is ever changing in keeping up with the world we saw. We've now started integrating with some of our security features and training, Alice training, and that's what you're going to hear about tonight. It's another tool that we can give the staff to protect the children. And we actually have 3 officers in the police department that are Alice trained, are instructors, and the ones who've been going around the school. I'm not going to take all Officer Kurt's information here, because he's going to be, that's his PowerPoint presentation. He is one of our new trainers to the Alice training. He's a certified instructor, and he is also the school's SRO. So we figured who better to teach it to you than the school SRO. So if I could have Officer Ryan Kurt come on up and go through his presentation, please.
Nice seeing everyone tonight. I know some people in this room. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ryan Hurt. The school resource officer. I got assigned to the schools last May after the former school resource officer, Jamie Donahue, she got promoted to sergeant. So I've been in that role since last May. I've been in the department about 4 years. I did 2 years with the Suffolk County Sheriff's Department before that, and I'm a 2005 graduate of Falmouth High School. So what we're going to do, the chief kind of already explained how we kind of came to Alice. Alice is an options-based program, and most schools on the Cape are switching towards options-based programs. It just so happened to be that Detective Andy Lowen, Detective Dave Massey were trained in Alice about 5 years ago. So earlier this year, at the beginning of the year, they put on an Alice presentation, demonstration with drills for myself, Captain Smith, Chief Dunn, the new superintendent, and members of the school administration. And I think we all had some misconceptions about Alice, which I think a lot of the public has. After that presentation, the drills, we were all sold. We all decided that Alice was the best program, best options-based program for our school. So I'm going to run you through a PowerPoint presentation. Some of the elements of Alice. There's a lot of stuff that we don't want to make public about Alice. Some of our tactics. So this isn't going to have every detail about the Alice training in there, but it will give you guys a good understanding of what the program is, and hopefully dispel some myths that are out there about Alice. First, I'm going to talk about our previous lockdown procedures. Previously, we've been running lockdown drills probably since right after Columbine. Our procedure before was when a lockdown's called, usually through the PA in the schools, students would move to a safe area in the room. They would turn off the lights, pull the shades, and cover the windows. The classroom doors would be locked, and some of the schools have connecting doors, and the teachers would be responsible for going into the connecting classrooms, making sure those are all locked. The kids and the staff members were told to keep silent and stay off their cell phones. They were not to leave the classroom for any purpose, including fire drills. We've done so many lockdown drills this way And we've tested this before. We pulled the fire alarm after we've done lockdown, and the kids and the staff stayed in the building. They did what they were supposed to do. After the lockdown drill, a police officer would go to every classroom, tell the kids it's a drill, and tell them that they can be released from lockdown when they heard the announcement from the principal. In a real situation, they were all trained. The only way you are released from a lockdown is from a law enforcement officer. That's that's not found in public schools. That's a Google image, but that's pretty much what every classroom looked like when they went to lockdown. Disadvantages of a traditional lockdown. Does anyone see an issue here? Does anyone see that's a little unsafe? Staff and students are left feeling like sitting ducks. This was the #1 complaint we got from staff and students. Even if evacuation to safety was possible, policy didn't allow it. Policy was to stay in the classroom, wait for police. Students are grouped together and defenseless, making for a very easy target. Nobody really knows how this procedure became best practice for lockdown after Columbine. A couple people have studied it. It's theorized that it started in the 1960s in LA. There was a lot of riots, a lot of gunfire outside the school. So what they tried to do was protect the kids by keeping them inside the school. Now the threats that we're seeing happen and start inside the school. And we're still doing the same lockdown procedures they started doing in the 60s and 70s. So what is ALICE? ALICE is an acronym. It stands for Alert, Lockdown, Inform, Counter, and Evacuate. ALICE is not a sequential order. Every letter can be moved around. When we enact a ALICE lockdown, it doesn't have to be in that order. And you can also use a combination of the elements of ALICE. ALICE is a research-based, proactive, options-based program for responding to violent critical incidences. You hear a lot about school shootings. It's just not for school shootings. ALICE authorizes and empowers those engaged in such an event to utilize building infrastructure, technology, and human action to increase their chances of survival. ALICE right now is used in 31% of school districts out of the over 13,000 in the nation. Most of the schools on Cape Cod are using ALICE training. In 2013, the Department of Education, Department of Homeland Security, FEMA, the DOJ, FBI, U.S. Department of Health and Human Services all collaborated on a document called Guide for Developing High-Quality Emergency Operations Plans. This task force report called for options-based lockdown procedures. In 2014, Deval Patrick, he tasked Department of Ed, state police, and multiple other agencies to come up with one specifically for Massachusetts. In this, on page 16, it states, depending on the situation, there are several ways to enhance a lockdown to empower individuals to take common sense actions critical to their safety. These may include barricading the door, using available furniture and other objects, distracting or countering the assailant, and self-evacuation. These actions are often based on response strategies of alert, lockdown, inform, counter, evacuate, ALICE, run, hide, fight, which is the Homeland Security's version, and hide, take, I can't see that far, hide, take action, which is the new NYPD's lockdown procedure. They also state any enhanced lockdown requires proper training and practice for all staff and students, educating parents on its benefits. That's what we're hoping to do tonight. The first letter in the ALICE acronym is ALERT. ALERT is your initial alert that something is wrong in the building. Usually it comes from a PA announcement. That's what we've done in the past. We also are training teachers to use sensory input to enact ALICE procedures. You don't have to wait for that PA announcement that there's a lockdown. If you hear gunfire, hear screaming, any sort of violent, loud noises, teachers are empowered to enact their ALICE procedures. You can also get an alert from text or other kind of phone-based applications that can also be put on computers, tablets. ALICE teaches you not to use code words in situations. If you go in most hospitals, if you heard code silver, not many people in this room would know what code silver is. Code silver is a man with a gun or a female with a gun. That's kind of a very important piece of information to know. So if we use code words in the school, we want everybody not everybody would know what everybody's talking about. Some schools use code red for a lockdown. We don't do that. We use lockdown, lockdown, lockdown. So we've done lockdowns in the past. Alice advocates for enhanced lockdowns. It teaches staff and students that they could barricade the door with multiple objects. It also advocates for enhanced locking systems. The district right now is testing some as we speak. If you affix a locking mechanism on any door, it has to be ADA compliant, comply with the fire code, and the building inspector has to sign off on it. So we're in the process of testing some products right now. Barricading is an important part of Alice. Not every door in the district has a lock. If you get found in maybe some of those connecting doors, you would maybe need to throw up a barricade, which is a temporary structure that can prevent access to that room. We'll get into counter later on in the acronym, but after you go into lockdown, you lock the door, you arm yourself with a counter device. Once you're locked down, you go look for alternate escape routes. Those could be those connecting doors we talked about. Those could be a window. After you lock down, you're going to want to dial 911 when it's safe to do so. We're also training the staff. Don't rely on other people to call 911. If you don't know if anyone called 911, 10 people might think someone else is going to dial and nobody dials. Happened earlier in the 19th century. Kitty Genovese was murdered in the streets of New York, and there was multiple bystanders. Nobody did anything. Nobody called the police because everyone thought somebody else was going to do it. So we remind the teachers, after you're safe, dial 911 even if you think somebody else did it. We're going to get out our first aid supplies, our Go Buckets. Go Buckets are pretty much a 5-gallon contractor's bucket, painter's bucket that contain basic first aid supplies in case the kids have to lock down for a long period of time in their room. These are some pictures from the internet of various barricades. Again, a barricade is just a temporary structure that could be removed if you need to evacuate. In the top left-hand corner, something as simple as a 2x4 and some sort of lashing. You could use an extension cord to create enough tension so if that door swings out. You couldn't, even if the lock was defeated, you couldn't swing the door out. The two pictures on your right are just massive amount of objects placed in front of a door. Nothing simple. We're not teaching specific barricading. It's just put heavy objects in front of the door. Very easy. It requires gross motor skills. Nothing too complicated. On the left is an example of a door hinge that you can tie with a belt or an extension cord to prevent the door from swinging out. The I is for inform in Alice. Inform is a continuation of the alert. You're passing along real-time information using phones, PA systems, radios. What you want to do is you want to broadcast the who, what, where, when, how, description of the violent intruder. If you're using the PA system, say someone in the main office is using the inform piece of Alice, if they say the shooter's name over the loudspeaker, if they say what they're wearing, where they are, you're not giving away any information that the shooter already doesn't know. So it's not, you're not, losing the element of surprise there. You want the whole school to know who's in the building, what they're doing, where they're going, and which direction they're going in. And what this does is it assists in determining whether to lock down or evacuate. It also can help you to choose the best evacuation route. We ran some drills at the high school last week, or earlier this week, and we were down near the health room, and there's 3 evacuation points there. So we informed them where the threat was, and which was in the main office, and they consciously made the decision when they evacuate, they're not going out to the main lobby of the gym because they'd be going right towards where the violent intruder is. So they went out the back door over near the track to see. So C is counter. C is kind of one of the biggest misconceptions about Alice. A lot of people think we're teaching kids how to fight, how to be proactive, go chase down the intruder. That could not be farther from the truth. This counter is your last ditch effort if nothing else works. If you're trapped in a room and it's just, the classroom, there's nowhere to go, and the violent intruder, the counter is what you do to save lives. The purpose of counter is to interrupt the physical and mental skills that make up the process of shooting accurately. When police shoot or when competitors shoot, they have to worry about their target acquisition, their sight picture, trigger control, stance, grip, and breathing. Any one of those thrown off, and they shoot inaccurately. So that's what you're trying to do. We're teaching people screaming and yelling is one of those ways to throw people off their we call it our OODA loop in shooting, but throwing objects distracting. I've done about 4 Alice trains already, training staff. I play the role as a shooter with a Nerf gun, and I have racquetballs, tennis balls thrown at my head. I know they're coming, and I'm an experienced shooter. And every time a tennis ball comes to my face, I duck. It's your body's natural reactions: duck, to move, to get out of the way. When you duck, move, get out of the way, you're taking your eyes off your target. We also teach everyone not to be a static target. In those pictures you saw earlier, they're seated on the floor, they're not moving, they're static targets. We teach people to put dynamic targets and move around and run. You also want to create distance. With any shooter, the more distance there is, the less accurate you are. So if you do choose to evacuate or someone's in the room and you want to get out, creating distance is going to be very beneficial. This is a video, I'm sure everybody in this audience has seen this. This is a video of the Reagan assassination attempt in the 80s. So I'm going to play through it and I'm going to talk to you about it. It says 3 minutes, but I'm only going to play a couple seconds of it.
On March 30th, 1981, in a beautiful suit, President Reagan appeared at a construction trade council at Washington's Hilton Hotel. The speech was lukewarmly received, and the president attributed that to the majority of Democrats in the audience. He appreciated their light but polite applause. Following the speech, he left the hotel to a side entrance and passed a line of press photographers and TV cameras. He was almost in the car when he heard what sounded like 2 or 3 firecrackers over to his left.
So with that clip of the Reagan assassination, does anyone know how many shots the bad guy got off? 6 rounds in 1.7 seconds. You know how many rounds the Secret Service fired back? 0. They didn't have to fire back. They were in such close proximity. What they did was swarm the bad guy, and they took him right to the ground and immobilized him. So at Alice, we teach staff members the swarm technique, which is just, it's simple movements. All you do is you overwhelm the bad guy, take him to the ground, immobilize him there. We don't teach any specific grappling techniques, no specific takedowns, just grabbing arms, bringing them down to the ground. That's exactly what they did, the Secret Service did there. And I think the first person who grabbed him was the boom mic operator from the news crew that was there. We had no training, it's just a natural reaction. So your E is going to be evacuate. This is going to be our this is going to be our preferable option when it comes to lockdown or Alice training. Occupants must have authority to leave the building, which now they do. When you evacuate, you leave all your belongings. You don't grab your coat, your book bags. You run as fast as you can out of the building the quickest way. We teach staff and students, especially at the high school, or only at the high school, they do not leave in their vehicles. What evacuation does is it removes as many targets as possible. If something's happening in the building, we want to remove as many people as we can outside the building. Evacuate can be used in combination with other elements. If something bad's going on in the room and other people are countering, people who are not countering or who are not close to the suspect can get out of the room. Removes the need for parents to come to the scene. So if something happened at the school, all the parents would flood to the scene. Evacuation removes everyone from the school, and we all evacuate to a rally point. Every school has a rally point, and that we do not disclose to the public where the rally points are. We teach people in Alice, get out safely. If you cannot make it close, or you can't go directly to the rally point because of safety, get anywhere you can to safety. And then what you do is you wait for an all clear, some sort of all call from the school, and they meet at the rally point, and they get picked up by buses and reunified elsewhere. With this Alice training, it's uncomfortable to talk about. It's a sensitive issue. Nobody wants to think that it could happen. So what we do is we take some special considerations when we do Alice training with staff, students. The first, the debriefing sessions. After every drill we do with teachers, we take a couple minutes afterwards. We do a series of 5 drills, and we do debrief with them. How did you feel? What happened? What did you see? What could you have done better? And then at the end of all trainings, we always debrief. Our previous drills, our traditional drills, were all unannounced. We would come to the school, put the school in lockdown. We would not tell them that it's a drill. They got very good at it. The best way to train is to do it like it's real. So the kids got very good at it. With Alice, with the options-based programs, it's a little more on them. So all of our drills from here on out will be announced drills. We won't tell them the date and time, but when we announce them in the PA that's a drill, we'll say this is a drill. We're going to partner with the psychological first aid team for aftercare. Even with drills, we're hoping to do that. And Susie Hoffman from Falmouth Human Services will talk about that afterwards. In Alice, we're still in the process of how we're going to introduce this to the students. Right now, we're focused on training all the staff members. So when we do introduce this to students, it'll be age appropriate. We're not going to be asking kids to counter. We're not going to be asking the younger kids to swarm. Everything will be age appropriate, and we're kind of gathering information from the different schools on what age level gets what kind of training. And that's, I guess, part of this forum tonight is to get input from you. We've asked for input from the school teachers who know the kids the best. We've also liked input from the parents if there's anybody in here. My information's on the bottom if anyone wants to write that down. You can call me, email me with any questions, concerns about Alice. And I guess we're going to do questions and answers afterwards, so I'll turn it over to back to Lori.
Okay, so I think one of the important things that, Brian said a lot of important things, but here at the end, we really want to make sure that our students feel safe and secure. We changed a couple of the protocols because of the feedback. As we were going around and noticing that when kids are there, they're not sure, the old drills, they are huddled together. They don't know whether it's a drill or live. And so after reviewing Alice, we did know or have learned that it's okay to tell them it's a drill. So we still will have drills that may be surprises on what day, but once we get to the school and we're going to do a drill, they're going to know it's a drill. We still expect them to follow all protocols, which students can do, and just set those expectations. I think the next part is especially important to me, is because we want to make sure that kids psychologically feel safe and feel okay about what's happening. And so not only if an event happened, but even after our drills. So Susie Hoffman from Department of Human Services is going to come up and talk to us a little bit about that aftercare piece. Thank you. Susan?
So I'm Susan Hoffman. I'm a social worker and director of the Human Services Department. And I'm just going to say a little bit about what psychological first aid is and how it's going to be incorporated into the Ask Alice trainings as well. So psychological first aid is, well, if you know what CPR is, psychological first aid is really about taking care of the psychological needs of individuals, children, families following any sort of critical incident. And this has been kind of a slow-moving initiative, largely led by Joanne Sykes from Morris Pond over the past several years in reviewing the town, or no, I'm sorry, the town. So the district has been looking at the comprehensive emergency management plan for many years, and one thing that was notably missing from the comprehensive emergency management plan was the psychological needs of students following a critical incident. And so Joanne Sykes and I started to review the comprehensive emergency management plan and see where we might implement or suggest protocols that would address the needs of students following a critical incident. So psychological first aid is an intervention to help children, adolescents, adults, and families in the immediate aftermath of a critical incident, and it's designed to reduce the initial distress caused after a critical incident. It's an evidence-based research practice. If you recall, Riverside Trauma Center off Cape has offered some assistance after accidents here, and so a lot of what they do for the state is based on psychological first aid. And so a team was coordinated, and Joanne and I volunteered to help coordinate the effort. And in August of last year, we hosted a 2-day training from Riverside Trauma Center on psychological first aid, and it was attended by a large number of school counselors, school teachers, local law enforcement, emergency responders. We also invited some community partners specifically that we wanted to join our effort in the event of a critical incident. So we had local clergy, we had some local mental health providers, and staff from Falmouth Human Services attend the training. And the idea was that in establishing these protocols, without getting into too much detail, if something were to happen within a school that went beyond the scope of what a school counselor or principal felt that they could manage, this is after an incident, this isn't during Alice, this is after when people are gathering after an accident, say, or after some sort of a disaster, that the point person in the school building could contact the psychological team leader in each building. Each building will have a psychological team member, a PFA team member, to decide whether or not they need more support services. So let's say at Morse Pond, Joanne could identify that we have the resources that we need. If it went beyond the scope of what could be managed in the school building, she would call the Human Services Department. The social workers on staff with the Human Services Department would be deployed to wherever, and Joanne would then give the information of what was needed to support the students and the staff for that situation. If it was something larger, we would then reach out to those community providers and clergy that have been trained in psychological first aid to assist in providing pretty much care and comfort to folks that are gathering after a critical incident. So again, PFA is based on research, and the research indicates that many people will experience anxiety, a lack of feeling safe, be overwhelmed, feel helpless, and to a large degree, not everyone that experiences a crisis or a tragedy feels this way, but some do. And the ways, if you can intervene in a way that provides a sense of safety, with some calming strategies, a feeling of connectedness to their support people, connecting people to who they might call upon to feel safe, and to kind of draw upon some of their own self and community strengths that help them get through difficult situations. So there's a lot more to it than just that, and as I said, it was a 2-day training, and beyond that, there's post-traumatic stress management protocols, which are very much based on debriefing strategies as well, and that is where we might utilize the post-traumatic stress management follow-up care, even following drills, and that is the team was trained in, and we hope to continue to train more people in the building. So the more this moves along, more and more people will understand what PFA is and will be trained in PFA. But the post-traumatic stress management stabilization groups and coping groups are a very structured group model, coping group model that can be offered after a drill, after an event, after a death. It can be offered to subgroups, and it's facilitated by folks that were trained in the model. Very simple questions of how did you hear of the event? How are you feeling? What were you feeling? What do you do in situations when you, in the past when this has happened, and how are you going to take care of yourself? It just gives, if we're thinking about kiddos in school that have maybe been through kind of a frightening drill, they will have the opportunity to sit down with the counselor and go through a very structured way of how they're feeling, how they're coping, what they're going to do to take care of themselves so that they can feel a sense of comfort and security. And so that would happen after a larger event, which has maybe been a death, and it can be offered in subgroups of, let's say, teachers could have one, it could be relatives or of a sibling, and then it could be a core team members, so you can offer them in different, and the more we build our capacity by having other trained and vetted local mental health providers or partners like Falmouth Human Services, we can feel confident that we have a plan in place to take care of the emotional and psychological needs of students and families following an incident. That's all I got.
All right, thank you, Officer Hurt and Susie for, I think that after you've heard that, you can see that we're trying to address the needs of the students and the crisis. We live in a time now that not doing anything is not an option. We have to train our staff and students to be safe to the best we can. But we know that this is anxiety ridden, and we want to make sure that our kids feel the most comfortable we can. So that's important to us. When we talk about kids, our students or kids being trained, I think it's important for us to know that we're learning ourselves as we go along, and we're going very slow. Alice will even say, take this slow over 18 months or so to implement. We are in the stages of training our teachers now. We had the first round in the fall, and we just started. We've had finished 2 schools of the 7 so far in round 2, phase 2 of the training. And the phase 2 of the training are only involving the teachers practicing all the drills that Officer Hurt just shared with us. And we're moving slowly into those other stages. So we're trying to be very thoughtful. We have an excellent safety team. And at this time, I'm going to call some people up so that we can start our panel. So Officer Hurt and Susie, will you join the panel here? And then Captain Smith, Chief Dunn. Patrick Murphy has done, on the district side, has done so much work. He's our Director of Finance and Facilities and Safety, and I won't keep listing, but we appreciate the work. So I'm going to ask our principal, Bushy, from Lawrence School to come up. So we have kind of a principal, but we have several principals here, so we can actually get multiple perspectives there if we have any questions for them as well. And is anyone else coming up? Okay. All right, so we're gonna. I think the mic is back working. It kind of went out on us, so we're gonna try this, right? Let's see. So I'm gonna put this over here, and and I'm gonna act as moderator. So we'll just start with questions and answers because this is, or just give feedback or comments. All right, so I can talk about it. All right, Steve, questions?
Much of this, I think, is focused on the times when students and staff are inside the school buildings. But what happens when the students are at recess or on a field trip or at gym when they're not inside the school building? So the lockdown really doesn't apply if a child is out on the sports field or outside of the school building.
So previously in our lockdown drills that we've been running, we purposely will run some of the drills when we know PE classes are going on or there's another activity going on. And those teachers are trained and they know how to get the kids safely to the rally point. So that's where they go. And we have MOUs with every rally point in town. These are facilities that we know are going to be open, can accommodate the students. So we have a written, I don't know if it's a written agreement, written MOU with these to use their facilities if we have to. They also know in ALIS training, if something were to happen outside, the best thing you do is create distance. That's part of the ALIS training. And we're actually also talking about, me and the chief were just having this conversation about if something happens inside, what happens to the people in the building. And that would call for maybe more of a traditional lockdown than if there was a threat outside the building, you walk down the inside of the building.
And I would just like to add, many of the components from Alice, I think we can all see, could be used outside of a school setting, in a public setting, where you would want to evacuate, create the distance that Ryan talked about. So some of these components from Alice can be used in everyday life as well. So it's not just strictly, even though Alice is for the schools, the components of it can be broadened out to be more generally applied to everyday life.
One more thing on that, Captain Smith just reminded me. These skills that Alice teaches are going to be with these kids and these staff members for life. These are going to be applied if they were in a church, in a hospital, in a crowded shopping mall, in a supermarket. What we hope to do is give them these skills so if something were to happen outside of school, they would have the ability to make it out safely.
Just kind of a random question, but do the students know where like the rally point is?
Did you get?
The students are always going to be with a staff member in the event of any kind of modified or other lockdown incident, and they'll go with the staff member to the rally points. It is a good question about the information that we provide with students about whether we tell them independently where to go, and part of that is because of the confidentiality of where the rally points might be and whether the students should have that information and pass it along.
If we'll repeat the questions before, because we don't have the extra mic, so here.
What if the student's in the bathroom when this happens, for example?
Our practice is for the staff members nearest the bathroom to go into the hallway and pull the students out. And we learned that through practicing either 1 or 2 years ago. We had come across that incident, and part of our corrective action plan was to have folks nearest bathrooms check into those rooms. And the question was, what are the students in the bathroom? Sorry.
Some additional questions? Actually, give you the mic. We're having some audio trouble.
How soon will the parents be notified if something like this happens?
The question is, how soon will parents be notified if something like this happens? And the answer is as soon as possible. As soon as we have accurate information to share with the parents. In the instance of a drill, I would personally start to key in a Connect Ed call to families immediately following the meeting, the debrief meeting that Officer Hurt was talking about. So I would say families would know from the school's perspective within half an hour of any kind of drill incident. Now, in a real emergency situation, I would think that someone from the police department might have an answer to that.
So in a real event, what would happen, unified command would be established between the police department, most likely the fire department, and the school department. And once those commanders, the incident commanders, decided that it was a good time to notify parents, as soon as it was able to do so, it would come from the command post.
Okay, so we would be able to come to the school immediately?
You'll be sent to a safe location, and that will be determined by the incident command.
So would that be here at Falmouth High School? Last year, the parents and the students had to come to Falmouth High School and do some kind of drill, and we were told that this was going to be a safe zone.
Sure. So one of the things that Falmouth has started, I give credit to Greg Kennedy and Bob Griffin, one of the few districts that have started doing training on reunification drills. And reunification absolutely can happen at the high school. This is a logical place for it, but it can happen at other locations too. So when we do the drills, it's really about drilling our staff members on understanding what reunification drills are all about. But that's a very important protocol that in a situation, if an event does show up, we need parents to go to the reunification site as opposed to the site where an incident is happening, or maybe we just have a broken pipe back there. No.
So I just want to follow up. All of our principals, even after drills, are
Just as part of the protocol to make sure parents know that there was a drill that day so that you can follow up with conversation with your children. And just, we're being very careful, and I think most people understand we can't give away the playbook, right? I mean, that's, this is a public event. So we are being careful somewhat in giving the information. The same, there was a good question earlier about the rally point, and do students know that? You will be notified where that location would be, but that's not necessarily something that we're going to share. Just like there are several other pieces. What Officer Hurt shared tonight about the ALICE training is the general information. So there are some other specific steps that we're trying to keep safe knowledge.
And, I'm sorry. One thing to add on to that, she talked about parents being notified, and we actually ran a mock critical incident earlier this year at the Lawrence Junior High School. We did a mock bus crash. I think it was in the newspaper. But we use real students, we use real parents, we use real police officers, real firefighters. We partnered with the bus company for a student, and we simulated step by step what would happen if two buses were to collide and we had a mass casualty incident, the fire department calls it, if multiple people had to be sent to the hospital. So all the agencies worked together. We did every step from the initial, the police were there first, fire department showed up, they triaged the patients. I worked with the school to get kids information, how to notify parents, how to reunify parents, how to, bring students to the hospital. We pretty much went through the whole process. We set up incident command, and we learned a lot from that. And we're going to try and run that, I think, once a year, hopefully.
Is the school district going to be implementing any kind of infrastructure improvements or technology improvements that could prevent a violent incident, like, I don't know, bulletproof glass or self-locking doors, that kind of thing?
Sure. So this, our presentations here focused on the PFA and the ALICE protocols. And those have been new or relatively new improvements to what we do. The Officer Hurt referenced this document. This document has been kind of our guidebook for the last 3 or 4 years. And bluntly, I'm going to be vague to your answer. I'm just going to, but there's categories of concerns or areas that we pay attention to. It's, we prevent, we prepare, we respond, we recover. In prevention, we talk about facility security. And we've made some significant improvements in facility security. And we're continuing to look at facility security and see what is relevant, what is important to do. Bluntly, the other side of this is that school districts now have lots and lots of vendors trying to sell lots and lots of stuff to us. Some of it is not all that great. So we have to vet those things also. And we talk with other school districts, we talk with the police and fire and first responders to say, what do you think is working? There was a reference about locking system, enhanced locking system, and it sounds like a really simple solution, except when you get a building commissioner, a fire prevention officer, and a police officer all in the same room. and a teacher, all in the same room, who understands children with disabilities, right? It's much more complicated. So we do look at those things. We have made some improvements in those, and we continue to budget for those and make those improvements at school-based level. Just the one caveat, there is bulletproof glass would be a 2-ton piece of glass. What there is out there is shatterproof glass, which just slows down an intruder that's trying to break through the glass. So that's just a caveat there. And we are looking at that, have implemented some of that kind of thing.
Additional questions? Concerns, Steve?
Like you probably can hear me. I'm wondering about some of the other prevention aspects of this too. You know, in terms of a lot of these times, if you see around the country that some of this comes from the student population themselves. So what advice would you give to staff and students and parents if they see a potential problem or, you know, there's a threat made? I hear see something, say something, but what could you say about that?
I know in my experience as the school, what happens is when we identify students with mental health issues, the school has an MOU with the school department, so stuff that happens outside of school, I can discuss with the administrators of the school. So we all kind of get together and form some sort of threat assessment team, and we discuss these specific students, how we can get them the best help, you know, how they're doing in school, how they're doing outside of school. If someone displays some side effects of mental health in the school and they have to be hospitalized or see a school psychologist, I do follow up with the parents at home, make sure there's no weapons in the school, get to know if the student has any additional mental health issues, are they getting treatment for it, you know. We work with the Falmouth ER has a great licensed clinical social work in there, so if we ever bring kids to the hospital, she's usually there during the day. We discuss treatment options, what's best for the student. So all that information is also shared with the school. That was referring to identifying specific. And if we get phone calls at the station all the time, a lot of kids' lives are on social media. So people sometimes will make posts on Instagram, throw out a Snapchat, you know, displaying some mental health issues. We get phone calls, you know, weekly to the PD, hey, my son saw this on this person's social media account. We often send police officers straight to the house, and then with that information sharing, I can allow the school to also do follow-ups with that student.
And just to add, it might be something that you see that's concerning that might not be violent, but a student that looks like they might need some supports. You can always contact the building principal, who would be able to direct you to the counselors or school psychs, who are very skilled, at least passing on that information. So I would say a direct call to the principal or email or something that you saw that was concerning.
And it's just what you really said in the beginning. If you see something, say something. That's really what police and law enforcement today, and that's in any situation. A lot of times people go like, well, I didn't think they meant it. You know, call us, let us investigate it. As Officer Hurt said, we go to a lot of homes and talk to a lot of parents and a lot of kids. And it's better to investigate it at the beginning than to say, geez, I didn't think you were something. So you're right. See something, say something.
I wanted to add too that when there are police calls to homes, something outside of school that involves a mental health situation, there's also follow-up visits done that are with an officer and a clinical social worker from the Human Services Department to follow up with an individual, adults, adolescents, otherwise, to see that they're connected with the appropriate services.
I would encourage all of you to go to the Sandy Hook Project and check out the Evan video. It really illustrates clues that can be easily ignored, and I would encourage you to share it with your kids. It's important.
Any other questions? I just want to go back to one thing that Officer Hurd had mentioned here. you know, the tools that we're teaching the staff and the student can be used in everyday life. And, you know, students are going to go off to college. And you see it every day now, it seems, somewhere, whether it's a movie theater or a mall, something happens. So, you know, these skills, these tools that we're teaching them can be used anywhere. We also, at the Falmouth Police Department, this Saturday, the class is full, are teaching a similar program, and basically it's what it's titled, How to Survive an Active Shooter Event. And it's to give you those skills if you're at a movie theater, at a restaurant, at a mall, how to survive that. We're going to, right now the class is full for this Saturday, and we're going to be having that again real soon, because we have a waiting list. But you know, if you're interested in more of that, and again, there's a lot of the same things that are being here taught as in Alice, but it's just not titled Alice. So again, another great tool.
I was just wondering if each building, or each school had a building-based emergency response team or a set of people that are the point people, so to speak, for these drills and/or if a crisis situation does happen. So beyond just like administration and maybe like your SEBA or school psychologists, are there, you know, larger groups of people within each building that operate when these situations happen?
Yes, earlier this evening you heard about the district safety team, but excuse me, each building has a building-based safety team that's made up with a broad range, and over the past few years each school has improved its coverage, if you will, representation. Our school's safety team has representation from teachers, teaching assistants, our school psych, custodians. Some folks in this room right now in the audience are on our safety team as well.
We have an incredible group of individuals on the school and district team. Teachers,
Someone from every building is on the district team. Greg Kennedy and Bob Griffin are also go out to the school team, so we have a lot of cross from the district to the school. I think it's that ongoing communication, the reciprocal communication that, you know, from the school level giving us information and us making sure that we're trying. So we're really trying to improve that. Communication can always get better, you know, but we are. So we have a incredibly thoughtful teams everywhere to be thinking through this. And so just, and then the partnerships, we can't say enough about the partnerships that I certainly wouldn't want to be facing alone. I appreciate the ongoing collaboration with Chief Dunn and Captain Smith and Officer Hurt, and then certainly the department. Susie's at our every meeting as well. So we really have a nice group of experts to be able to share and try to make the best decisions we possibly can. Any other questions? I have to do that 7-second wait time. All right, so we appreciate you coming out. Anytime you have questions, you do not have to wait for a forum. You can certainly go in and talk to your individual principals. I am available at any time. Please, the door is open. We want feedback. We want to hear how things are going. And so that's, you know, there's opportunities to share ongoing if you think anything. We do want this to be a community-based initiative. So thank you. Chief Dunn, you want to say?
Yeah, and the same thing here. If you have any questions, you know, feel free to call the police department and ask for my office. We'll we'll connect you to the right person that will hopefully get you the answers that you need. And it is a great collaborative effort with the school as we move forward here. The programs has really evolved over the years, and it will continue. It's ever changing, but right now we think this is the best practice that we have.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming.